Welcome back to the Adventure Athletes podcast, Wales' #1 podcast for adventure athletes, sharing stories of those creating a difference within themselves to benefit others. In this week's episode, I sit down with Owain Jones, an ultra runner that I met while completing my ultra last year, where he was completing 12 ultras in 12 months. So he was running at least 50 kilometers in one go throughout the month, each month for the whole year. In this episode, we talk about his 12 and 12 challenge, how to decide what is going to be a big event that year and what is going to be a smaller side quest, and why you need a partner that grounds you. At the end of each episode, we set a challenge for you guys, the listeners, to complete at your own convenience, and hopefully is something that will help inspire a change in your life. Now, you all probably know that I am fundraising £10,000 for BigMoose. We're quite away from that number, so if you've got anything spare, I would really appreciate a donation, following the link in the description below. Something I am doing to help raise this money and awareness around BigMoose is I'm going to be attempting a world records tyre flip covering the greatest distance in 24 hours. This is quite a monumental feat. It is something that is really intimidating and scary to me, and that makes it the perfect challenge for this fundraiser. So yeah, please donate as much as you can. If you've been following the podcast, you know that I've got some pretty lofty goals for this world record. We do other fundraising as well, so we've got some smaller challenges coming up. I run a weekly group run from Pontyclean, so if you're interested, DM me and I'll send you all the details for our weekly group runs. And we will be running a climbing course on the 1st of April as well. This is for absolute beginners, so if you've never climbed before or you want to transition from indoor to outdoor climbing, we have got some fully qualified instructors taking us from indoor to outdoor climbing and teaching us everything we need to know to stay safe outdoors. So if you want to come along to that, again, send me a DM or book on using the website. And for now, enjoy the podcast.
As you was just saying, like you went from like nothing to a lot really quickly. But I want to dig into the 12 in 12 a little bit. Can you give me like a breakdown of the 12 in 12, like how you thought of it, why you were doing it, and then what the ultras you did were, like distances, events, things like that?
Yeah, sure. So I obviously had ended up doing the 5 ultras in 2021, and that was actually in a space of about 4 months from the way the ultras like planned out on that year because of COVID and everything like that. They were a little bit more condensed, and then I kind of told myself I'd do 1 year of ultramarathons then after that, because I enjoyed them so much, because obviously you get to see so much of the country doing an ultramarathon that you just would not have seen otherwise. Obviously, if you're a hiker and you're going up in all these mountains and you know these trails and you're on like OS maps and all that kind of stuff, like you might see all of that a lot slower, but I quite like that you're seeing it. It's like a whistle-stop tour kind of thing of all these places, and you get to see so much more of the countryside that you might not have been able to see otherwise. And I think that's, a lot of why a lot of people run, is to see, or trail running especially, is to go out and see it. So I said I'd have a go at triathlons then. So I did Fishguard Half, and then I did Ironman Wales in 2022, which was an education in itself. And loved the training. Loved race day, apart from got my nutrition very, very wrong for the bike and the run, so suffered but managed to pull it on. And then later in 2022, my father was diagnosed with prostate cancer. Just completely out of the blue, like he'd read online, somehow he must have seen an advert on TV or something like that, I think he said. He thought, oh, well, actually I've got a few of those kind of symptoms, that's a little bit worrying, so we went to see. And so he had his diagnosis, and I thought, well, what can I do to raise money? What can I do to support the cause and show support for him? And I'd been thinking about doing like a challenge or something like during 23 to try and keep my training going and try and like keep my mind occupied a little bit from like that because I didn't want to dwell on it. I wanted to try and turn it into like something positive, so that I could deal with it in my way. So I thought, okay, right, I'll raise money, and rather than like one event, I'll do one a month, and it can't be short. It's got to be something that's going to be quite difficult physically. So he was quite lucky. He only ended up having a course of radiotherapy, which is obviously still not fun, and he's still on the injections and the tablets now. But I thought in a way, I wanted to suffer alongside him a little bit. So I thought, I'll do 12 ultras in 12 months. I thought, I've managed 5 and 4. What's another few? Like, what's another 7? Like, doesn't matter. And like, one a month, I thought, right, I can do this, and I can do it so that maybe like the first month, I'll do it at the start of the month. And then, so January, say, do January the first week, and then February, I could do like the end of February. And I thought, that's a good idea, because, I can have a lot of break in between, I can have plenty of training time, I can recover well. And it just did not work out like that. Like, absolutely did not. Because obviously life gets in the way, work gets in the way, family commitments, stuff like that. And it was hard. So I think in January I did what was it? So I went along the coast. So at the time I lived in Litchard in Bridgend, and I went down through Bridgend, through Newbridge Fields, down through Merthyr Mawr sand dunes, and then I turned right along the coast, and I went up and around by there. So I just did like an hour and back basically. So towards Port Talbot Steelworks.
Yeah.
So that was quite nice. Like, I knew the area well. I stopped and I grabbed an espresso on my way back in this little like coffee shack on at Cody Beach, which was nice. February I did the same route, but I did it the other way. So I went more Ogmore, like, and towards Southern Down.
Yeah.
So I think I ended up actually from my house in Litchard. I ended up in where was it? The power station. Down past. You go past Lantern Major, all along the way there, and then it's the power station by the fancy house.
Okay.
Essentially ended up there at the 25-kilometre mark, and I thought, yeah, let's turn around, because I thought it's got to be an ultramarathon, and although like technically an ultra is anything longer than a marathon, I wanted it to be 30 miles or 50 kilometres, like as a standard. For me, when I was going out to do them, it needed to be 50k or over.
Yeah.
So I was doing like 25k out, 25k back. So I did those ones on the January and the February. And then March time then, I think because April would have been the South Cannon. Yeah, so March then I just did a tour of Bridgend, essentially. Like, I just went out and about and ran a couple of trails that I'd never gone down before, because I thought, well, I had the day off work. Like, I had the day off after as well to recover. So I thought I'll just head out, like, had my trail shoes on, had my pack, plenty of food, plenty of water, like, all of the good stuff. And I thought, let's see where this goes. Like, I've never been down there. Like, where does it go? Like, because that's very much a part of what I do now in my training, is I try and go down lanes, roads, any little pathways. Like, if you see a public footpath sign, like, I'm probably going to go down there if I don't know where it goes. Yeah. Like, if I've got the right shoes and stuff on, then I'll go just to see where you end up, because you might end up finding like a really nice little stretch of a run route that you can add on. And obviously, like, if you've gone a little bit faster on a run, and you've got, okay, so I've banked like 10 minutes, then you've got 10 minutes to play with. So I think, well, if I've gone down that way before, and I know that like tacks on like another kilometre and a half to my run,
yeah,
I know I can push it a little bit, and I know that'll add me roughly 10 minutes, 12 minutes, whatever. So I know I can tack on like little bits, and there's stuff around where I live now in Lanharry. I know little shortcuts and stuff through doing it that I know that I can add on a couple of kilometres, a couple of miles, depending on how long I've got. And how long I've got available to go. Like, loops of certain forestry areas up in Smilog Woods. Like, I know from my door up Smilog around the top bit and back down again is about 17 kilometres.
Okay.
So it's like, you know then how long you've got and how far you can go with the time.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So you can adjust your pace accordingly and you can play around with it a little bit more.
Doing that has got me in a lot of trouble at times, especially round your way as well, because I did the 496 challenge in January, and I work in Llantrisant.
Cool.
So then I was like, just between jobs, I'd never run around there before, so I was like, oh, like look at some Strava like little segments and stuff and see where it takes me. And I ended up going to Smilog, and I got lost and ended up in a bog in a farmer's field, and I was in like all my work clothes. I didn't have anything to change into, so I remember turning up to coaching and my socks were just like absolutely caked in mud, and I was like, I'm really sorry, guys. Yeah, those doing those little trails, and you're like, yeah, where does this go? Like, sometimes goes really well,
Yeah.
sometimes doesn't.
Like you say, like with the right gear, it can go really well. But if you don't and you go down there, sometimes you have no choice but to go a little bit further, don't you? Or you don't have any. You don't not have a choice. Sorry, I've worded that wrong. Like, you have the choice to go down, and you know you probably shouldn't because you can see how muddy it is, but you just want to see what around the next corner, don't you? You want to see what's over there, like what's that. Like, I've been up Smilog a few times, and I still don't know all of the routes. Like, I found a little section this week, and I ran down it, and I know now that where that is, it'll take you right back down to the road. So that cuts off 2 kilometres. So if I know, like, I don't have my head torch, and it's getting dark, then I know I can cut that off, and that cuts, 15, 20 minutes of running off my time, which is handy. So going back to the 12 and 12, the third one was the start of the Pegasus Slam for that year. So I'd signed up to do the Slam because I thought, love Reese, love the company, love the ethos of it, and obviously like having an opportunity to run an ultramarathon and have no cut-offs. Like, what other company does that? I don't know about you, but I don't know any other companies that have no cut-off times.
Yeah, I've not heard of one.
Like, so I think it's, it's a game changer, and especially like, because a lot of people are worried about times. Like, I've never signed up for one previous to Reese's in 2021 because obviously the cut-off times, and I thought, well, you're paying all that money to enter a race, and you've banked the hours, you've done the training. Like, that's great, but on race day, if you have a bad day and you miss it by like 2 or 3 minutes, like, you've done it in your head and you've done the distance, but you haven't got the medal. Like, you haven't got the t-shirt, and it's all about the t-shirt. Like, I do love a good t-shirt. But so the start of the Slam was the South Cannon. I felt good. I'd had like a solid year of training for the Ironman. Felt nice. Like, I thought I'd dialed in my nutrition a little bit better. Got about 10 miles in. Just needed the loo. Couldn't shake it. Like, so that was my first wild poop. Like, yeah. So that's probably like the only real story I think from the 12 and 12, like the funniest one anyway, for me at least, was yeah, having to wait and see if I could find a section that was quiet enough that I could nip into a bush and be safe, and did my business, like sorted that all tidy and proper, and I ran on, and about a mile down the road was the next checkpoint, and I didn't know, but there was a toilet at the checkpoint. So if I just carried on for an extra couple of minutes, like, there would have been there was a pub, and they were letting the runners go in and use the loos. So I think I need to do a bit more research in the future as to possible points needed. And my partner Alex, she bought me a pink trowel to carry with me on my runs ever since, and it's always in my bag now. A trowel and the eco-friendly compostable wet wipes.
You haven't used them since?
No, I haven't had to. Touch wood. I've been very, very lucky. Or I've done my research and I've managed to use loos along the way.
Yeah.
In like pubs and stuff, which has been very, very handy. So the South Cannon, I ended up doing that in, I think it was 9 hours 15. And the year previous, or the 2021 when I'd done it, it'd taken me, I think it was 10 hours 45 minutes. So about an hour and a half knocked off, and I felt pretty comfortable, pretty happy, like I'd kept it nice and easy after that initial like issue. Felt a lot more comfortable after that, obviously. I try and enjoy it. Like I know quite a lot of the volunteers and stuff now anyway, and you get a lot of return runners doing the events with Reese. So it's a little bit more of a jolly. Like, you know, it's an event, and you know it's a competition technically. Like, I'm never going to be up there with the main guys, like, ever. Like, I'm certainly not fast enough, and I like my beer too much. But there is a little bit of a competitive edge. Like, you'll chat to people, and you kind of like, you'll pass them, and then they'll pass you, and you're like, oh. And then, you know, you'll try and do the same, and towards the end, normally like the last 10 miles is normally when I find you can either like really dig in and put a bit of wedge of time in, or they'll do the same to you and you won't see them again normally. Like, trying to think what the next one after the South Cannon was. So I think it was the Howham after that, and that was obviously the first one that I'd ever done. So I definitely wanted to get a good time for that one, or a better time than what I'd done previous.
Yeah.
And then so I went up and I camped the night before, and then morning of, like, set off, pushed it, and I like was chatting to people, was trying to like stick with people that were roughly the kind of pace I wanted to be going on, like the various sections. And I thought, well, if I can stick with someone else who's roughly my kind of pace and like buddy up with them, especially if you get on with them, then I thought that's great. Like, I can just tag on with them, like, and stick with them and stay on their heels as long as I possibly can. And I think it was me. What were the names? It ended up being 3 of us anyway, like on the last stretch, because on the first half of it, essentially you're going uphill, and then on the second half you come in downhill, and after the first half of the second half, it's quite a lot of like lanes.
Yeah.
Like, there's quite a long stretch of road and tarmac. So I thought, my knees are gonna hate me for this, and they didn't like me, because obviously you got a lot of up and then you got a lot of down, so it's all on your thighs, like at the end of that. And I was looking at my watch, I was like, oh crap, you know, I wanted 7 hours. Like, I wanted to knock off at least an hour, and I thought, right, okay, I'll aim for 7, because that's like a challenge, because I thought you're definitely going to be going slower uphill, and then you'll be able to go a little bit faster on the down, but you'll be a little bit more tired because you've already done, 15, 16 miles odd. So I kind of pushed it a little bit as much as I could on the downhill. I kept looking at my watch, and there's this little stretch not long before the end, and it's a bit of like a trail, and then it goes down, and then there's just this like bitch of a short, sharp hill, and it's only about 30, 40 metres, but it's just steep, and it's right towards the end. Oh, fuck. Got back down into town, so I knew it was close, back to the tarmac, back into town. It's just down this little lane back to the campsite, so it's not an hour and back, sorry, it's a circular route, and the start and the finish is in a little campsite. I've got like 10 minutes, 10, 11 minutes, and I was like, I know it's about like 2 kilometres still. I was like, oh, this is going to hurt, isn't it? So I went off, and obviously a lot of runners had already finished before me, and they'd obviously like packed up their bags, they had their goodie bags, they bought their t-shirts, and they were driving back down the lane to drive home. So you'd get like this steady stream of cars coming down with like runners going, yeah, beeping their horns and go on. Like, yeah. So I just started going as fast as I could, like sprinting it, and ended up sprinting across and doing it dead on 7 hours.
Oh.
Like, literally dead on. Like, every couple of 100 metres, I was like, oh, fuck. But yeah, like, managed to get dead on. So that's my fastest 30-mile time. So I'm pretty chuffed with that. Like, yeah, I'd like to improve it obviously in the future, but I was pretty chuffed with it. and the Vogum was the next one in June. So then that was, so that'd be number 3. So that's halfway through the slam, and that's the coastal one, and that's the one that's closest to me, because I was in Bridgend at that time. I think I then moved in with my girlfriend Alex in Lanharry, but we stayed at mine in Bridgend, so that it was a bit of a closer commute to get to the start of the race. But you start in Coney Beach, and the start then, like the first half, is sand and trail and like sand dunes and stuff. So it's quite a tough first half of it, but enjoyable because you've got the nice scenery. Like if you've got the weather, like we were quite lucky, it was quite nice weather, then you've got so many like views around you. Like you've always got the ocean to your right, so navigation isn't a problem.
Yeah.
Like if the ocean's to your right, you can't go far wrong. Like same with the canal. If the canal's to your left, you're okay.
Yeah.
Or to your right, like depending on which way we had to go across with the bridges. And I ended up meeting someone that I used to go to school with, which I thought was pretty cool. So I was chatting with her for a little bit. Never knew her in school, but we were just chatting, and turned out we'd been to the same school, and we knew like a bunch of the same people and stuff, so that was quite funky. And then like buddied up with a couple of people. So a guy called Torrin Hughes. He'd done a bunch of stuff with Reese in 2020 and 2021, and I think he's gone on to have a crack at like Tour de Grant. I'm probably mispronouncing that. I think he did is it the CC UTMB one? I think he might have had a crack at that one. Accomplished ultra runner in his own right, and he was having a bit of a bad day, but he was still moving at my like best pace. So I was like, okay, like you're more like, I knew I'd get on with him because I'd met him before, I'd chat with him before. So I said like let's buddy up and let's like run, and that was from, I think that was just after checkpoint 3, I think that was. So that was down in Barry and then the caravan park. So about halfway through the Vogum you go through Barry, which is a bit of a weird one because you spend the first half kind of on your own on the coast. There may obviously be other runners, walkers, hikers, dog walkers, all of that, so you'll say hello and stuff, and then they normally say hello back, and you can have a little quick chat as you like run past. And they're like, oh no way, how far are you running? You're like, oh, I'm doing 40 miles. And they're like, oh, you're crazy. I'm like, yeah, why do I enjoy this? Is this a problem? Like, should I be enjoying this? Like, I'm in a little bit of pain like that right now, but I'm really enjoying it. Like, and we're not even halfway through. Like, what's wrong with me? Like, what is this? So Barry obviously is an awful lot busier, and it was a nice day. So it was jam-packed full of people, and it was just, you could just smell all the fish and chips, like the burgers, and you just running through it like... and you just kind of find yourself veering off a little bit towards the burger van or like towards the chips, and then you're like, no, I need to like stay focused, need to carry on. But it's the second half after Barry then, for quite a way you're on tarmac. So you have this absolutely beautiful first half where you're along the coastline, nice lovely trails, you go in, like all the up and downs, like the little bits, like in and out of the coves and stuff, and it's really nice. And then you go through Barry, and it's just grey tarmac for a little bit. But we buddied up, and we were like pushing a little bit, and then we'd walk for a minute, and then we'd push for a minute or two, and then we'd walk, and we did that. And this girl that I was in my school was just behind us, and like every point that we'd left the checkpoints, so like when we left checkpoint 3, she was just coming in, and got to checkpoint 4, and then we left as we could see her, like, or I could see her like running down towards the checkpoint, and this is coming back to like the friendly competitiveness. And I was like, oh, can't let it be me. Can't let it be me. Like, and it's just those like little mental games that you sometimes play with yourself. Like if you're on a run, you're like, oh, well, I'll run to that lamppost, and then I'll walk to the next one, and then I'll run the next 2 if you're having a bit of a struggle and you're having a bit of a hard time. Like that's, if you're on a road, like I'll try and do that, or I'll run to that tree, and then I'll walk for a minute, and then I'll run for another little bit. So we were trying to like alternate it, and I was trying to push it on. And we finished, and we came, so you go along, obviously, the coastline, you come out, I think it's Penarth Park, okay. I think it is. And you go along this trail, along the coastline, and there's just hedgerows on either side of you for a while, and we were quite lucky. 'Cause if it's been raining, it's quite boggy apparently there, like it's not very solid underfoot, but because it had been a nice couple of days, like it was quite solid, so it was nice, so we could push it a little bit more again, and it kind of, the hedge just stops and you open out into the park, and it's just this straight paved pathway leading to the finish line, and there's a little bit of grass on either side, so you're like, right, okay, I know from here you've got about a kilometre till the end, and I've been looking at my watch and I wanted it, like I'd aimed for sub 9 hours for that one, because I thought it's 42 miles. I thought, it's an extra 10 miles, 2 hours, give or take. I'd be happy with that. I'd be cool with that. And it had been getting close, and me and Torrin had been checking our watches, and I was like, Torrin, I'm really sorry, mate. Like, I'm gonna have to go. Like, I want this. Like, I want it. And I could see, like, if I went, like, I could potentially get it. So I ran in and did it. I think it was like 8:58 in the end. But it's interesting because that's obviously along the coastline and the coastal path. It's not flat. It's very much a lot of up and down. Like you're cutting back on yourself, and then like you're coming back the other way. So it might be down there, but then you're coming back up, and then there's like really sharp turns. You got sand. You got the sand dunes. Like the differences then between like the tarmac and having to weave in and out of people. Like obviously that takes time. That saps your energy a little bit. But I finished that one over 15 minutes quicker than I did the flat canal one. And I think I'll always find that interesting. Like, it just baffles me because that doesn't make sense. Like, you'd think a flat race would be faster than a hillier one.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the case in the end. Like, yeah.
That's interesting because, yeah, like you said, you'd always think the flat ones are quicker. And I guess for shorter distances, it would be because, you're not going up and down hills. You don't have to contend with the elevation. But then when it comes to ultras, I guess, like you were saying earlier, you're using different muscles. So it's sort of like doing the ups gives you a break from the downs and vice versa. So you can kind of keep a steadier pace when you like look at it over 50 miles. But then if it was flat, you're just smashing your knees. So you just kind of want to take it that little bit easier.
Yeah, like I think when I was looking at like my pacings and what I wanted to do for the flat one, I definitely dialed my timings back a little bit because I knew that it was going to be quite tough to just be running potentially consistently. So I like tried to do it every kilometre. Like if I wanted to, I'd walk for a couple 100 metres or something, and then I'd run a little bit more just to give my legs a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
And have like a little bit of difference in movement, and like I'd be going over the bridges like walking backwards or like sideways just to have like a different range of motion for my hips, just to try and like loosen them. But I was a lot better obviously last year than I was when I did the first batch of them. But it's true, like you do tend to pull your punches a little bit. Like if you know that you've got up and downs as well, like you're probably going to walk the ups unless you're an absolute machine like some of the guys you've had on the podcast. Like I'm not running the uphills. Like I probably could, but I know for a fact like that would ruin me for the rest of the race, and that could spell disaster. And so far, touch wood, I've never DNF'd a race. And like I might be tempting fate here, hopefully not. But I've never DNF'd. And I'd quite like to keep that streak going if I can. So I'm certainly not ashamed to walk the uphills, even if it's a slight uphill and I'm feeling a little bit tired at that time. Like I'll walk it because I'd rather walk for a couple of minutes and stay comfortable, and than not overexert myself and potentially not finish the race.
Yeah.
Like I'd much rather just take it back, like dial it back a notch or two. Like
I think I need to to realise that, because whenever I see an uphill, I'm like, right, now's my chance to get some time back, and I'm like, I'm gonna like go as fast as I can, and it's not like I'm sprinting up the hill, but like I'm really trying to push it, and then I look back and I'm like, it would probably be more efficient if I just walked. Like, I wouldn't have lost that much time. I've probably gained like 2 minutes, but like I've lost like hours when it's like my legs are now absolutely wrecked.
Do you find that you climb stronger than you descend then?
No, I'm much better at descending.
That's interesting, because normally like people, if they attack on the uphills, then they're more confident with climbing, and then they tend not to be as good maybe on the downhill stuff. Because I'm not as confident on the downhill. I find like it just, I'm not massive, obviously. Like I'm 13 stone at the minute, like hoping to drop down a little bit for Wild Horse. But like I find if we're going downhill and it's quite like chunky kind of like trail downhills, it's more like uneven steps.
Yeah.
And I find that puts a lot of stress on my legs. So I'm not as confident then going down, because I'd rather save my legs a little bit. But I know that going uphill, whether I've got poles or not, like I can just put my hands on my knees and I can just plow away, and I'm comfortable, like I can do that. So I tend to find that I might push myself a little bit harder on the uphills than I should. Although I did get caught out in the rhythm, actually, interesting that we were talking about earlier, about it being your one. Last year, it was me and a couple of guys, and it was just this really, really nice downhill section, and it's just this like super, think like UTMB, like you're up in the mountains, like you've got single track going around like a forest on one side, you've got fence and then like fields of sheep and cows on the next. Like it's just picturesque, except there's like Mackham down there. But it's just really nice, runnable, easy, and we were just pelting it. And we really, really shouldn't have, because we paid for it later. But at the time, it was enjoyable, and we just got caught away in the moment. It was like at the start of like a road race or any race, when you can sometimes get so caught up in the excitement and everyone else is going past you, and you're like, oh. You just try and like keep up with someone, or you push yourself a little bit faster than you probably should. And we just got a bit carried away in the moment and ended up like gunning it down this long, like a couple kilometers maybe long, just downhill. And it was beautiful. It was amazing. Like it was worth it.
Yeah.
But we really probably shouldn't have done it. Like,
so selfishly, I really want to ask about the rhythm. What's the course like? What's the elevation like? Because I've set myself a goal. I'm not going to say my goal publicly. And I've told my coach a goal as well. I've recently got a coach. I'm starting training with him today, funnily enough. And I've told him a goal, but my goal's different to the one that I've told him. So if you're listening, Grant, I'm sorry. But yeah, I'm not going to say the goal in case it goes completely tits up, but I really want to know like as much as I can about this course, because it's ambitious, especially for me. But yeah, like as much detail as you can about the rhythm.
Okay. So you start in, is it Park?
Penalta Park.
Penalta Park, yeah. Downhill pretty much straight away. Loop it around a little bit, and then you go. It's like a bit of a mix of trail and tarmac for the first couple of kilometres.
Okay.
Think until the first checkpoint, it's a little bit of a mix. Like there's stretches where you're going through fields and they can be quite boggy, and then stretches then where you're going along lanes, which obviously a little bit of tarmac. The last couple of kilometres though, before you hit the first checkpoint, is you're coming up onto one of the sides of the mountains. So it's a bit more like a loose rock, like scree kind of thing. Like it's muddy, it's rocky, the surface in it is uneven. And I don't know about you, but I love that kind of stuff. Like that's like nice. That's proper trail, like, you know. And it's a bit of like an up and down, bit undulating, but it's fun. Hopefully for you, if the weather's nice, it'll be nice and solid underfoot. But equally, if it's rained for a day or two before and it's a little bit softer, that'll probably be better. So you get to the first checkpoint, and then you're straight up after that checkpoint. get to the top. Like it's a bit more of a longer kind of short and sharp climb, I think, out of the checkpoint. And then you go and flat for a little bit, and then it like gradually goes up again. And then just after that, you'll reach one of the trig points up on the top of, I don't know if it's Macca Mountain or not. I don't know the names of the area very well around there. But essentially, you can tap the trig. That's 20, 30 metres off the course. And then you're going down. So you go down a steep section then, and then you go in sharp right. And that's where that really nice, long, runnable downhill section goes. Have you run any of the events with, I think it's Ridgeway Runners?
No.
So they do a couple of events in Caerphilly, and they start one or two of their races from like a village hall kind of thing.
Okay.
Down, is it Mackin? I don't think it is Mackin. What's it called? Down there anyway. You run past that essentially, so you've got a little bit of a stretch where it's tarmac again, and then you're going back onto the trails, and then it's up again. Like, so there's a lot of like sections where it's up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
So you go past, you go through a golf course, so you have to cut across the golf course, so obviously be aware of the golfers. And it's not fantastically clear, so make sure you've got the updated route on your watch.
Okay.
Like, 'cause obviously Reese normally will have flags and marshals if he can. At like the points where you're crossing roads and like danger points and stuff, like someone will be there to like normally make sure you're okay and tell you which way you definitely need to be going. Same with any race. Sometimes you get people taking down signs and stuff, so if you've got the route, like I think he's made it like a mandatory thing now.
Yeah.
For the races, like you have to have the route downloaded. But for that section, like definitely need it because it's not exceptionally clear. Because you kind of cut across a couple of fairways. And then you're going up through like a bit of like brush, and it's quite like thin single track kind of stuff, but it could be like brambles, nettles. So if you don't wear calf guards or a pair of tights or anything when you're running, you might get snagged and stung a little bit.
Okay.
If it has been raining, that section more than any other I found is very boggy. Purely just for the terrain and where it is, and you get like, depending on where you are in the race and what position you're in, whether you're towards the front or the middle or the end, can depend on how long and how well you're able to deal with that section, especially after the golf course, because it's can be very boggy, very muddy, and there's a couple of downhill kind of bits where, again, if it's been muddy, you might have to take it a bit easier, because no matter how much grip you've got on your shoes, some of those sections, like, it's just not going to do anything for you.
Yeah.
Like, after that part, I think, is when you start short concrete kind of stretch, and you cross over the road up the top by GE Aviation in Caerphilly. So it's quite busy dual carriageways coming off that big roundabout at the top of the hill.
Yeah.
So you do have to be careful there, obviously. But common sense and don't take any risks. Same as I'd say to anyone crossing any road. Like, especially during an event, like, you can get a bit carried away, but just be sensible about it. And then about a kilometre or so after that, I think, is where you go through the bog, the famous bog. And I don't know if the farmer does it, but like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he does put a hose down there a couple of days before just to get it nice and moist for us, nice and moist for everyone. Because I think that then, once you go through that, because you can go straight through, and normally this is where you'll see one of the cameramen, because it's a chance for people to get muddy and fall over and stuff, so they might get some good photos. So they're there, they want to be there. So you can either go straight through the middle, which is what is recommended, I believe, but you'll still get people like trying to go around the outside, because you think, oh, well, it might not be as deep on the outside because not as many people would have gone that way. But I'm not sure myself. I've done both and I've been okay both times. Like the first time I did it, I ran around the edge and I was alright. Like, I didn't lose any shoes or socks or anything. And I didn't go up to my legs either. But the second time I went through just straight through the middle, because I thought that might be easier. And that was, to me, no different than if I'd gone around on the side. But I know other people have gone on the sides and they've been past their knees. And, you know, they've almost lost shoes and they've had to fish them out, and yeah, they've had a bit more of a tougher time than me. But you go through that section, and then you've got another little bit then through some fields. So the last time I did it, there was a couple of horses in the field that you have to go through, and they were by the gate. So if you're not, we were quite lucky. There was a lady called Anita who was with us at the time. Like, she joined us from the dual carriageways, and she tacked along, and like, I know Anita through the Pegasus events. Lovely lady, and she'd come along and she joined us, and she wasn't doing the run herself. She was just out and about trying to catch people that she knew, like running that day. So that was really nice. So I got a chance to have a big catch up with her, which was cool. But luckily she's got horses, and has had horses, so she was able to like shuffle the horses away. Yeah. So if you're not overly confident with horses, like, it can be a bit of like a worrying kind of thing. Because
I think I kind of know the section you're on about, because obviously I live around here, and I run around here, and yeah, there's a little trail bit that I run down, and there's always horses there. And I've had it where I've had to like completely go off path because I'm like, they're just blocking the way, and I don't want to be getting chased by a horse today.
Is it Russell Brand who said that he doesn't trust them? Was it they're dangerous at both ends and shifty in the middle? It's either Russell Brand or it's a Jack Sparrow thing from Pirates of the Caribbean or something like that. And a lot of people, if they have horses, they'll say horses are like big dogs, but they're still a big animal. Like, and obviously they've got hooves, same as cows. Like, cows can be lovely, but cows skin. Like, cows and horses, like, they just weird me out, because one kick from them, or if they get it in their head that they want to run at you and you can't get away, like, that's you done. Like, I'm sure there's more deaths a year from cows than there are from sharks.
Yeah.
Like, which is absolutely madness, and you would not think that. But yeah, luckily she was there, so she like patted them away, and there was about 6 or 7 of us then by that point that had like caught up with everyone, and we were all like running in a little bit of a pack, like chatting. So we ran past them, and not long after that, then you've got one of the checkpoints, which is by a pub. So it's just along this little lane, and then there's a pub on the corner. So it's like, I don't know, 8-9 car parking spaces, if that. So you've got them marquee up there, and there's like a bunch of the volunteers at the table, and there's normally some like handmade brownies and cakes and stuff, because a lot of the volunteers like to make stuff. And Reese always keeps a pretty decent stocked checkpoint, to be fair. Like, there's normally like Vimto, Fanta, Pops kind of stuff. There's sweeties, crisps, little flapjack bites, brownies, like loads of little extra bits and bobs as well.
Yeah.
So it's always quite nice, because like, if you've got so far in the race and you've brought your own nutrition, which I think is always something that you should do. I think you should always bring what works for you and what you've trained with, because you know then that you're not going to have any problems with it, touch wood, or you shouldn't have any problems with it because you've trained with it. But if you don't have anything of your own, you're relying on whatever is provided. And if you haven't trained with that, potentially you're asking for a disaster, because you don't know how your body's going to react with having like a couple of 100 grams worth of Haribo sweets through the course of 8 or 9 hours, where you might have been using gels or pasties like yourself. So I think it's, it can be used as like an add-on. Like, if you fancy something different to what you've used and you know it's okay, like, you can have a little bit of like a Freddo chocolate bar. Like, if there's a Freddo, like, I'm taking it. Freddos are expensive now. They used to be 10p. Like, it's not anymore, mate.
No.
It's getting. So you go past that bit, and then you go in straight up. And you might have run this section, because from that pub you go up past like an abandoned farmhouse. It's like a derelict farmhouse, but it's just like on a slight rise, and you've got to go through a couple of fields, and then it opens out and you go along the top of the common.
Okay.
And then when you drop down the other side, eventually, you can see Pontypridd.
Okay.
And there's like a lane then you're going along. So that's a bit more of a grassy section, but part of it is a very weird one where it's really tight, like sheep track almost.
Yeah. So
it's quite hard to run, because you're almost like running like that. You can't run with like your normal feet kind of like hip width apart. Like you've got to like always be putting your feet in.
Yeah.
So it can be quite hard to keep up a pace on that one. Like in the end, I think we started walking like sections of it where it was getting a bit tight because it just wasn't worth trying. Like I think by that point it was me, Craig Buffton, and Anita, and then it's tarmac again for a little bit, and then you're going back along, and it's like an uphill section then where it's a bit of like tarmac, bit of fire road kind of esque stuff, and it's towards that point that we were really feeling our previous fast descent. Like we were feeling the pain from pushing it a little bit too much, and it's the last stretches. It almost seems like the same as at the start, where it's like the shaly kind of fire road stuff.
Yeah.
And then it kind of comes back around then to another lane where you're going like downhill for quite a long stretch where it's tarmac. So if your legs are a bit sore from all the descending and ascending and stuff like that, then that can be quite painful. And then you're like turning around and it's a few like little tiddly kind of bits. And there's one section then where you're going down this field, and you go through, and then immediately then at the bottom it's a very steep kind of short bit, and it's an old rickety sty, and immediately then you're crossing a road, and it's quite a busy road going from one of the Park Penalta bits back towards the motorway, or one of the ways that you can go. So there's normally someone there as well to like make sure everyone's okay crossing the road. And then you're just going down past this like little farm shop kind of thing, and then it's just around a couple of corners, and you're back in the park. But you're coming into the park then from the other way.
Yeah.
So you're going from the bottom now, like on the other side. So you're going around. So you know you're close because you've seen the signs. Like you can pretty much see where you are, and then like it's a long kind of, not a long, but maybe like a kilometre uphill, like gradual uphill, and then you turn right. And you're into the park, so you would have seen by that point all the cars from the event, like all the runners' cars where they've parked up. So you know you're close to the finish, but it's like such a leg sapping kind of course. I found that by that end stretch we just didn't quite have it in the legs to run like consistently. So we were like walking a little bit, run a little bit, walk a little bit, run a little bit. But then obviously once you come around the corner and you know the photographers are going to be there, that's when you know you've got to run then, haven't you? Like you've got to run it in if you can. It's tough, but it's good. It's good fun. Like it is. I don't know. I'll have to send you the route or something.
Yeah, I think he's got it on the website, so I'm going to download the GPX when I get I've just had to send my watch back to Garmin. So when I get that back, it's going to be straight on there. I'm going to split it into sections and do some recce's. First time I've ever recce'd a run in my life, but yeah, we'll do it.
I've not really recce'd runs myself. I normally prefer to just find out on the day.
Yeah.
But for Wild Horse now for this year, I'm having to try and go out and recce a few of the sections. There's a few where if you're not fully compos mentis, if you're a little bit tired and knackered by like day 3 or 4 or something, then knowing that it's that gate on the left rather than the gate on the right, even though they might look the same, it's really going to be something that's quite handy to do. So I think that'll be something I need to do more, and I'm heading out this weekend, this Sunday, for a little bit of a recce down the Gower. So I think we're going from checkpoint 9, which is in Pencloud, and we're going to run from there to the finish line, which is in Rosilly, by the sunflower fields. So I think that's about 17 miles, something like that. So we're going to like lift share and do like an hour and back. Not an hour and back, like we'll park one
car, drive to the other bit, run it, drive back.
Sorry, we've gone off on a bit of a tangent, I think, haven't we? Like, cause you did ask me about the 12 and 12 and everything.
So
I've kind of gone off on little tangents, which is
I love a tangent on this podcast.
So easy to do, so easy. The Edam was the only one that I'd not done before with Reese. and last year it was changed slightly. The route had to be changed because the British military were doing exercises.
Okay.
So we weren't able to run the usual route, which I was a little bit gutted about because like I knew a couple of friends and stuff that had done the previous route, and I kind of, competitive side of you want to give yourself like a goal, you want to give yourself a challenge to like aim towards. So I wanted to kind of aim to beat people on previous doing the same course. But we did a different one. And that was tough. Like that was definitely the toughest event of the year and the toughest run. So that one is 50 miles. But that's a lot more elevation. So you end up going up past or nearby like Linnevanbach. Not too far away, at least I think, from there. You don't go past it, but it's the same kind of area. And it's like all around by like Senny Bridge and stuff like that. So there's a lot of like fields, sheep track, like up and down mountains. And I think after checkpoint 1 you go through, so we were already soaked through anyway. And after the checkpoint, like your shoes had just about dried off because you run on a little bit of tarmac for a little bit, and then it was just about 20-30 minutes of up this little old Roman road, I think it was. And it just turned into a river. So you're just walking through water for 20 minutes, half an hour uphill, because there wasn't anywhere else for the water to drain, so it was just all coming down. So you got a little bit soggy. So that was probably, I think, the hardest one mentally for me, because in my head I was thinking, right, okay, well I can do the Vogum in under 9 hours, and that's quite hilly. That's quite a difference in like elevation and stuff. Like I had like a solid bit of training like coming up to it. I'd done all the other ones, so I was quite confident. Like I felt happy. I felt like 50 miles I can do this. That's only 10 miles more. Like in the grand scheme of things, like if I just dial my pace back at the start, what's another 10 miles at the end? Like I've done a flat one, what's a hilly one? Thinking, well, the flat ones are harder than the hilly ones, and it was kind of true. But I'd had in my head that I wanted to hit 12 hours. So I thought, well, 9 hours maybe for like the Vogum, it's like the hilly 40 miler along the coast. I thought, yeah, another three hours to do another 10 miles. Like I thought that's about realistic, maybe with like the added elevation that you get in it. And just, no. did not work out that way at all for me. Like I enjoyed it. Like we stopped in a pub, and we had a pint. So we asked the landlord to put the pints in like plastic glasses, so we could walk away with them. So that was quite cool. Like we were enjoying ourselves. I think it was me, a lady called Karen Warlow, and a young lad, or I say a young lad, I think he's my age as well. Tom Palmer, I think he'd come up from like Lower England way, like Southampton kind of thing. So he'd come a long way, and I think he was going to be driving. I think he drove up the night before, slept a couple of hours maybe in his van or his car, and then like he was doing the event, and then he was going to have to drive straight back. So props to Tom. Like if you're watching, like fair dues. Yeah, and so it ended up taking us, I think it was 14 and a half hours in the end, which was obviously an awful lot longer than I'd planned. And we finished literally just as it was going from like dusk to dark. So that was disappointing. Like I wanted to finish obviously faster and stronger than we did, or stronger than I did. But a finish is a finish. So I think, it's something that you might kind of have that little argument with yourself during the race, and obviously like immediately afterwards, and maybe even still now, I'm still like, oh, dick, like what were you doing? Like you could have taken it easier on some sections, you could have maybe like paced it a little bit better, like perhaps if you hadn't stopped so long grabbing a pint and walking with it, you could have like tacked on an extra like 10 minutes. Like would that have affected you? But then you have those memories from doing it, and if you've got the time, which obviously in the Pegasus events you do, why not stop for a pint? Like who doesn't love a pint? Like and like I'll always remember that, like stopping mid-race, mid-50 miler for a pint in the pub, in the middle of nowhere. Like that was great. That was really enjoyable. The last kind of couple then were, I think it was the Pigum, which was a new one. That was new last year. And that was tough. Like, you go maybe 1 kilometre, 2 kilometres from the start, and then you're straight up the Blorange. And it is straight up. Like, it's, you're single file, like, going uphill. And then, I think it's 5 or 6 miles maybe from the finish, he sends you up Sugarloaf. And I'm not... Because Sugarloaf isn't a mountain, is it? It's like a couple of metres off.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I call it a mountain still.
It's pretty much a mountain. I think if it's not a mountain, it's short by like 10, 20 metres or something like that. So it's pretty much a mountain. But yes, you go up that about 6 miles maybe from the finish. And obviously you've done 20 odd miles plus before you even get to that point. And again, it's quite a lot of up and downs for the Pigum. So that was good. Like, that was obviously like a fresh new race that I'd not done before, so I didn't have any idea of like pacings, times.
Yeah.
I didn't know how long it was going to take, so that was quite nice in a way. But yeah, definitely quite tough. Like, good fun, but tough. And then the last one was the Riddim. The Riddim was the last. That is the last in the slam. So like, going back to like the trophy kind of stuff, I should have brought one with me actually. But you have a trophy if you do the slam. So if you do all 6 of the runs, you get a trophy just for you, and it's ones that I make through my like partnership with Reese now. So this year it was fence post, and I routed in slots in the top of it, so that once you finished, it could be like a display for all your medals.
Yeah.
So it'd have like the Pegasus Slam 2023, and then I burnt your name on, because I do it all by hand. There's no like laser engraving kind of stuff on it. It's all burnt by hand. So I've got one at home for myself, because obviously I did it. So that was like quite an interesting one to make myself a trophy. That was quite cool. But everyone who finishes them who finishes the slam gets a trophy. And I know this year Reese has done the medals, working with his mate Chris, who does all the graphic design stuff for him. They've done it so that all the medals, when you line them up next to each other, they make one scene. So it's like a seamless...
That's cool.
Kind of like, it's so cool. Like, so cool. I mean, it's almost enough to want to do it again. Almost.
There's still time.
I know. But the Wild Horse is end of May. So I think it's 22nd of May to the 27th. And then the Vogum, which is the 42 miler, is going to be on the first weekend of June. So it's probably going to be on like the 5th or 6th of June. So I think a week after a 200 miler, I'm probably not really going to be in any like fit state realistically to take on a 40 miler. I'm probably barely going to be able to bend over and put my socks on.
This brings up an interesting point I wanted to ask about actually, is because you did 12 ultras in 12 months. That doesn't leave a lot of time for training and recovery. So, like, how did you deal with that throughout the year? Did you bother doing much training, or did you just sort of use one race to go into the next?
Like you say, so you just kind of, one race kind of feeds into the next. So what I would normally try and do after, like, the ultra is I'd have the day off afterwards if I could, from work, or if it had fell on a weekend, I'd do it on, like, the Saturday, so I had the Sunday to recover. But I just made sure I was getting in the right nutrition. So plenty of protein, plenty of rest. Like, I'd do some stretching. Like, I might go to, like, get like a massage or something, like a sports massage, which is a painful experience in its own right sometimes, because especially when they get those like little metal things. Have you had it where they do the metal things on the bottom of your foot?
Yeah.
It's good, but I don't like doing it often. I kind of found with training, like, I'd have a couple of days off after doing the event, and then I'd start off by just doing like a short race. Not a short race, like a short run. I'd go out for maybe 1 or 2 miles, maybe like a 5k, just like somewhere local, and I'd just keep it super comfortable for like a week afterwards, and then I'd maybe try and see in on how like I felt. I'd just build up the runs. But for me, like, some of my shifts, like, some of them are regular and some of them are the same every week, and others I might pick up overtime. And some weeks, obviously, you have certain family commitments, social commitments, everything like that comes into the play. Like, sometimes you might want to go for a run, but you really need to get the fucking dishes done. Like, you have to do them. They're building up, like, you've got to do them. So, like, sometimes you might have 3 hours to play with on a certain day, and other days, or on that same day the following week, you might have half an hour. So I kind of would try and fit my training in where I can, the same as I'm doing now. But it kind of, you want to get those longer runs banked, if you can, before. But towards the end of the year, like you rightly said, like, the one leads into the other. Like, you know you have the cardio fitness to do it. You've trained up to do the one event. And then in between, you're just on, like, upkeep. Like, you don't need to do too much in the in-between.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to overtrain. You don't want to push yourself too hard on a certain run and find that you pick up an injury, like, halfway through the year, because then the rest of the year and the whole challenge is in jeopardy for the sake of an hour pushing yourself a little bit hard. Like, there's no point in that. Like, equally, I say that, but then obviously bank in, like, interval sessions and hill sessions and stuff like that, or runs where you are pushing yourself a little bit, is, you know, it very much does have its place in training for events and stuff. But what I found for myself personally was that I would just do it on how I felt.
Yeah.
And I'd just try and, like, keep it comfortable, and you know that you can then do those longer events in a couple of weeks' time because you've already done it. You know, towards the end of the year, it didn't get boring because they're always enjoyable, they're always fun, but it just became a bit more of a challenge to fit them in, because one a month doesn't sound like a lot, but that's one ultramarathon every couple of weeks. So you lose a weekend every month to an event, and you've got to fit your training in between that then. And that became it became more of a challenge to find races and do the runs in between everything else than it was to actually go and run them. Because by the end of it, it was just 30 miles. Like, it was just like a long and steady, slow day out, enjoying the trails for like 8 hours. Like, you know, it was just something fun, and hopefully it'll always be something fun. But recovery wise and, like, keeping it up, it is quite tough. Like, but yeah, it just kind of feeds in. It all becomes one, which is mad because, you know, if you'd have asked me a couple of years ago, do you fancy doing an ultramarathon a month? You know, for a year, I'd have told you to fuck off. I can barely do a 10k. Like, yeah, which it's cool. Like, it is cool. It's just repeated. It's just what you practice, isn't it? Like, if you put the hours in, you put the training in, it's going to become easier. Like, and you'll get more comfortable and confident, and you'll know what you can put your body through and what you can put your mind through. Which I think is, you know, important. Like, it's nice to get out and about and get some fresh air, and enjoy exercise. Like, which I do. Like, it's great fun. Like,
what would you say was the hardest of the 12 then?
Probably the Edam.
The Edam.
Yeah. Purely for the terrain, the elevation, and it was just crap weather. Like, it was just like that fine rain for pretty much the entire thing, and it just made the terrain a bit more boggy, a bit more squidgier. And whilst that was probably nice in a way for your feet because it was a bit softer, it certainly does sap the strength out of your legs a little bit. But yeah, the Edam, I think, mentally and physically for me, was the hardest. But I would like to go back and give it a crack again. Like, I definitely think I can knock an hour or so off it.
Okay.
Like, that's on my personal challenges kind of list. Sorry, Alex.
On the flip side then, what would you say was the easiest of the 12?
Probably the Vogum. Yeah,
okay.
Only because it's a race where a lot of the course, like, certainly at the start, I know well myself from going out and doing runs and training runs along the coastline.
Yeah.
and we were so lucky with the weather, and it, like, having that nice weather for an event just makes a massive difference. Like, it lifts up your mood, like everything's just more enjoyable. You know, like on the OTT, when it's raining and it's miserable, and you know you're going up Penavan and you're just having to like bow your head and tuck in because you're just getting like sideways rain. It's just miserable. Like having like nice weather, it doesn't have to be warm. It's just dry. Like it does make an awful lot of a difference. And we're so lucky, obviously, to live so close to the coast. Like, you know, here yourself, you're probably, 45 minutes away from the coast?
Probably not even, probably half hour.
Yeah, like, which is mad. So, like, quick half an hour in the car and you're on the coastline.
Yeah.
Like, and we have some beautiful, beautiful stretches of the coastline to play on. Like,
and equally, I'm about the same distance from the Brecons, so...
True.
Yeah, I've got the best of both.
Both. Yeah. I would like to get up to the Brecon Beacons a bit more. Like, chatting to Alex the other day when we were talking about maybe going up for a hike or something. But it's on the Wild Horse route.
Yeah.
So I think we cross over the Brecon Beacons in that. So that'll be quite interesting. Like, I definitely need to go and recce some of that.
If you're in South Wales, like pretty much wherever you go, you're kind of like on the 200-mile route.
Yeah.
Because it says 200 miles, like covers a fair distance.
We recently went on a trip down to Devon, and we put it in the sat-nav in the car, and it said 160 miles. And I was like, fuck's sake.
Yeah, it's quite a way.
Like, this is going to be fun. Because that's about 12 weeks away now, I think.
12 weeks, is that it?
12 weeks, I know.
How are you feeling for it? Are you ready?
I mean, is anyone ever really ready for 200 miles, like up and down the Welsh mountains? I don't know. I'd like to think yes, but equally the longest run I've ever done is 50 miles. So 52, I think, was the North Cannon.
You're a quarter of the way there.
Yeah, exactly. So if I can do a quarter, I can do the rest, right? Like, no, I'm quietly confident in a way. Like, I'm hoping the closer it gets, the more I'll just be like, balls to it. Like, whatever happens, happens. Like, my only plan really is to just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like, head out and have fun. Like, enjoy seeing those stretches of the country that I've not seen before. Hopefully it won't be horrible weather. But I'm banking as much hours as I can with life and stuff and work. It always feels like you can bank more, because whatever you do never quite feels like enough for something like that, I think. But then equally, this is the first time I've ever done anything as long or as mad as that.
Yeah.
Like for other people, like they can do like 2 or 3 of the long distance stuff, or I say long distance, like the super long distance, and they'll be okay and they'll enjoy it. And I think it feeds in a little bit like my apprehension is, because a lot of the people I know, especially since starting like running ultras and working alongside Reese and stuff, doing the trophies for him, they are so accomplished in what they've achieved. And obviously, like, Stu has come on here, Bob Thomas, like, you know, Stu won the Wild Horse, South Wales won the first year that they run it. Bob's done his like 100-mile drum kit, so like I think he cycled in 2022. I think he cycled to, it was either Lanzarote or like Spain or one of the islands, or Malta, I think it might have been, with his father. And then like a week later he came back and did Ironman Wales, like the same Ironman Wales that I did, and he just wiped the floor with me. Like the swim, we were kind of like neck and neck with timings. Like we both came out just over an hour. But then after that, like, he was gone. Like, incredible athlete. And same for Reese, obviously, like FKT, previous for the Welsh Coastal Path, and like all the runs and like Badwater and stuff like that he's done. Stu as well, super accomplished, super strong runner. And I think it's tough sometimes, because you know these people for these accomplishments, and it's hard not to compare yourself to them and their accomplishments, and you think, oh, you know, like I've only done 50 miles. Like, can I do it? Like, I feel a bit like a fraud attempting 200 miles when I've only ever done 50, 52.
I mean, you say that, but then using Reese as an example, the first time he'd ever like run a long distance, he was like, you know what, I'm going to run from Boston to Austin across America, and did 2,000 miles with like literally no experience. So I think you'll be all right with 200.
Yeah. It's a weird one, isn't it? Because until you actually do it or attempt it, you don't know if it's possible.
Yeah.
And I think I like that. And that was part and parcel of the 12 and 12. Like, I wanted to see if physically I could. Like, obviously, it was for a good cause as well. Like, it was just help support my father, raise money for charity for Prostate Cancer UK. But it was also a little bit for me as well to have that challenge of something to keep me going, keep me moving. And knowing that I can do it definitely is mental strength banked, like, for the 200, because there's undoubtedly going to be parts during that race where it'll be a bit of a grey area, like I'll have a bit of a downer.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'll feel a bit like am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to be strong enough? Like, have I done enough? Like, what's happening? Like, oh, I'm in pain. Like, do I carry on? Like, don't I? Like, I think it's until I try to do it, I'll never know.
Yeah.
Like, it's interesting, I think.
Yeah. I feel like I used to be very much like you in the sense that it's like you're looking at these people and it's like, well, they're like doing these incredible things. Like, I don't have the right to be doing those things. I haven't earned it yet. But then from doing this podcast and sitting down and talking to them, I've been like, oh, like, you had no idea what you were getting into either. Like, you hadn't, like, the first time you'd done one of these things, you was in the same position that I'm in now. And it's like, they're still...
But just 5 years ahead kind of thing.
Yeah. But it's like, even then, like, I'm still talking to them. Like, I had like a guy, Graham McKenna, on, and he was saying about he still has that doubt. And he's done like stupid distances and he still gets that imposter syndrome. And I'm just like, that is like crazy to think. And then I compare it to myself, and I've recently signed up. I've applied for a Guinness World Record.
Cool.
So that's going to be the greatest distance covered flipping a tyre in 24 hours.
Okay, sick.
So
you're going to do it barefoot?
I'm not going to do it barefoot. So, yeah, that's I've signed up to that, and like it is so intimidating, and I'm like, I've no idea like what's made me qualified to think I can do this. And then I'll look back at like my 50-mile barefoot attempt where I had no idea if I could do that. And then I did the Welsh 3000s, and again, I wasn't that experienced in the mountains, so I was like, what gives me the right to be doing this? And then just everything that I've done, I look back on and I'm like, no matter how much I do, I'm never going to feel qualified.
Yeah.
So you just do it unqualified. And I think the same applies for my work, funnily enough, is I've always gone for jobs that I've no idea if I can do or not. And I'm just like, as soon as I start, I'm like, I feel massively underqualified for this. But then I always do well in it because I just work hard when I'm there. And it's like, yeah, just don't worry about feeling qualified. Just go out and try your best. That's it, really.
It's, like you say, like it's tough to not kind of feel underqualified. It's tough to not feel like a bit of an imposter and not feel like you shouldn't be there doing that because you don't have the experience, kind of thing. But yeah, like you say about all the challenges and stuff that you've done and have coming up, like until you do them, you don't know. Yeah. So it is a bit of a weird one.
I feel like if you're feeling qualified, you're probably not trying something that's like exciting enough.
Yeah.
And you need to like step it up a bit.
Like I promised my girlfriend Alex that Wild Horse 200 would be the only big event of the year, and so far it is. And I think I'll be able to keep to that for this year. But I think once it's a really weird one. I think because once you start giving yourself these like little challenges, and I say little challenges like 12 and 12, like Welsh 3000s, like Guinness World Record attempts, like Wild Horse 200. Like, they're not little challenges, but you see them as like a little challenge.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, that's this year's challenge. Like, what's next year? What's the year after? Like, I've done 12 in 12, so that's one ultra marathon a month, like, for a year. But the longest one was 50 miles. Most of them were 30 or 40s. The 40s, I think there might have only been like 3 or 4 of them, and the others were all 30 milers. But like, what then? Like, 200 miles is next. So like, okay, that's 200 miles. Like, touch wood, I'll hopefully finish. And I would like, obviously, to do it within the cut-off time, which is 120 hours. And I will be absolutely ecstatic to even finish. Like, even if I finish in, 2 minutes under the 120 hours, like, I will be ecstatic that I've managed to do that. But secretly, I want under 100 hours. Like, I'll say
Not
that.
so secret anymore.
Yeah, like, I'll say that publicly because, like, I've told Alex, I've told a couple of friends, like, that's my goal. Like, that's what I want. Like, I want under 100 hours. Like, I feel like we've got 55 hours to reach 100 miles. And I kind of, I want just something nice and round about 100, isn't it? Like, under 100 hours. Like, that sounds cool. Like, I want that. But that's the aim. But I know in the past, I've done, like, the 12 and 12. Like, I haven't tried the 496, though. And I would quite like to do it. Or, like, is that the Goggins one? The 4x4x4, is it?
4x4x48.
That's one I want to try because I've not done that one. But the 496, that's so you do like a corresponding kilometre or mile for every day of the month, isn't it? Is it a kilometre or a mile, or does it matter?
So the official 496, and there's like lots of different official things, but the one that Sean Conway does is kilometres. And I've said this a few times on the podcast now, but since having Bob on the podcast and he's done it in miles, the first message I got when I said, I'm doing the 496 challenge was from Bob being like, why aren't you doing it in miles? And I was just like, oh God. And now it's in my head that I have to do it again in miles because it's not good enough because I've been called out on it. So I'm like... Fuck's sake, Bob, like. He did actually come to support the last day of the challenge, so he came down on day 31. We were doing laps of Butte Park, so I did, it was like 8 or 9 and a bit laps of Butte Park, I think it was. So yeah, but he came down, he did the first 4 laps with me, and then he was like, right, I'm gonna go off and do my Ironman training now. And I was like, what? He was like, yeah, I'm gonna go do I think he called it like a green session on the bike or something, where he's just going like all out, like zone 5, killing himself, and trying to hold it for as long as possible. And I was like, you've just run like 15k, and now you're just going to go off and do your normal training because that's not enough for you.
Because he's only down in Pontypridd now, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, I keep telling him I need to get out for more runs with him. He's not far at all, and I'm like, I should probably.
We'll have to sort it because I'd be keen to come out for a run as well.
Yeah,
like, more ways to explore places around. Like I'm down.
I've got a couple of previous guests that are planning to go on a run with each other. So I got Mike Jenkins and Terry Rosamond. So yeah, Mike listened to Terry's podcast and was like, I've got to meet this guy. I want to go for a run with him. So I commented being like, oh, Terry, you up for it? I was like, yeah, sure. And then Mike, funnily enough, came on the podcast because he joined for the last day of my 496 as well.
Yeah.
Never met him before. Saw me posting about it on Instagram. He was like, oh, this is cool. Can I come with you for your last run? And I was like, yeah, sure. And he's spoken to Bob like online, but he'd never met him. So like he was over the moon to meet Bob as well. Yeah. So.
Because Terry is the owner of Rockman, is it?
Yeah, Rockman.
Yeah, so I think I've like met him in passing, I think, but I've never like properly chatted to the gent either. But from what I understand through like Bob, Reese, and stuff, who I think know him a little bit better, they've all said absolute lovely, genuine bloke.
Yeah, he's amazing.
So I mean, if he's coming for a run as well, like if we can get get everyone for a run, like that'd be proper cool. Like that'd be inspiring. Like to get to chat to everyone.
I'm hoping to do like what I want to do is because this podcast coming up to a year now.
Congrats.
Yeah, it's getting really
doing
close
anything
to
for
a
the
year.
anniversary?
Well, this is my
run?
plan. Is I want to do like a group event with as many of the previous guests as I can.
Yeah.
I think that'd be incredible. Just getting like everyone together and just being like, let's do some like stupid event. Just like doesn't have to be like multi-day like what you'd expect. But like I'm just thinking like I love going Pen y Fan. We're in South Wales, so like everyone knows Pen y Fan, and I'm like, if we could get everyone to do something at Pen y Fan, like there's got to be a twist to it because Pen y Fan's not going to be a challenge for like Reese. It's going to be like
flip a tire up it.
The guy that I actually started this podcast with, he's done that.
He's flipped a tire up it.
So yeah, just something like that where a big group of us do like a group challenge in the Brecons. Doesn't have to be Pen y Fan.
Yeah.
Because that is a bit overdone. But yeah, I think that'd be great.
That would be pretty cool. Like I know for one of my 12 and 12, I did want to go up and do the fan dance.
Yeah.
And so it roughly works out, I think, about 23 kilometres, I think it is, for the fan dance. So
yeah,
the plan,
23, 24.
The plan that I wanted to do was to do that twice.
Okay.
Like, because that would make then
That is brutal.
the 50 kilometres, and obviously I'd have to tack on an out and back somewhere along the way to build up that extra kilometre or two or whatever I needed. But on the day that I'd planned to do it, it was just horrendous weather, and I thought, I'm not going up there. And it was going to be me and a friend of mine, Kyle, that he was going to meet me there and we were going to do it. And it just wouldn't have been clever, I don't think. Like, it wouldn't have been safe for the weather that we would have had to do it in. But it's certainly something that I would like to do again, and what I'm going to try and do before the 200 is just to get up there, and even if I drive up there, park my car for the day in the car park and just head out and do it, because I can use the car as a base then, can't I? Like, I can just leave extra water, extra calories and gels and whatnot and sandwiches in the car and just come back and do it again.
So maybe that could be part of the thing is we'll do something to do with the fan dance. That'll be interesting. I've got some ideas, but yeah, I want to finalise something.
Like, I'm keen for that.
That would be cool. Yeah. And just getting like, because obviously like I've started like making these connections with people, and I know some of them already know each other, but then to connect them all like together and like. I've got guys with like very different backgrounds. So I had a strongman come on recently. I've had like Olympic lifters, a lot of ultra runners by this point. It'd just be really cool to just get them all together and be like, look, 1 year, this is how long like I've been doing weekly episodes. Like that's 52 guests.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a lot of guests.
Weekly, is it?
Weekly.
Fair play.
Yeah, it's a big commitment. But like, yeah, imagine like 52 of like the most like incredible people meeting up. I think that'd be amazing. Not that everyone would turn up, but
but you could put a couple of dates out and see which ones are available for which. Yeah. Like I'm again we go back to like the kind of imposter kind of stuff, like like you say, like a lot of ultra runners and obviously like I've done like 16 now, so I am an ultra runner.
Fair amount, yeah.
Like, I am, but I don't really see it as being. I don't know if I count myself as an ultra runner, like, because you don't necessarily run all of it.
Yeah. Because I had Nathan Marshall, who did the slam with you. Mm-hmm. He came on, and he was like pretty similar. And I'm like, you've also done 12 ultra marathons in a year. Like he did it in what was it, like 9 months or something. Yeah. And it was just like, and he's like, yeah, like I don't really feel like I'm deserving of coming on here. And I'm like, you're insane. You've done some incredible things. And I think he's getting over that now because he's got his own podcast.
Okay, yeah.
So he started a podcast after coming on here called the Just Run podcast.
Okay.
So I feel like he's now feeling a bit more worthy of the attention.
Yeah.
But I do think he still struggles with that. And he's just released his own event as well.
I saw.
Which
I think
is really
he'd
cool.
spoken to me about it, and he'd mentioned about it because he's asked me to potentially do some trophies for it. It was either for that one or is this the relay
Yeah.
thing? Yeah. So he's asked me if I can do something. So hopefully we're going to sort something out. So that'll be pretty cool.
I think it's called like the Dragon Cannonball or something. So if you're listening and you want to do a massive relay event, check it out. Like, Nathan's a great guy and sounds like they're going to have great trophies.
So I think, massive relay event is just about covering it, because I think the relay is for the entire coastal path, is it?
Yeah.
So that's what, 870 miles? So I
And
think
he's
it's gonna
looking
be-
at 80-mile days
Yeah.
minimum.
Like, so 80-mile days per person, you get 3 days rest. And then you're back to it again. That's mad. Or is it?
You're thinking about it. You're like, next year's challenge?
Like, Bob, what are you doing next year?
You'll be coming to the meetup and trying to sign people up. Like, so I've heard you're pretty good at running. Can I get your number and do you want to sign up to this event with me?
I'm here to talk to you about your car's extended warranty.
So, one more thing I did want to ask about was just the OTT, because obviously that's where I met you.
Yeah.
Running the OTT. You beat me, which still bitter about. Although, like, I say that, I'm really not. But in my head, whenever I meet someone running and I'm going with them, I'm like, oh, I want to beat them, like you were saying. But then I'm so underprepared for it that I never win. So I just always like, oh, yeah, that sucks. All right, maybe next time. So I had a very different experience to you. So I want to hear like what it was like for you, because I met you. What checkpoint was it? No, it was coming. Was it coming down Pen y Fan? Yeah.
So we were going down. So we'd already done the worst parts of it, I think, weren't we? And it was more on the flat before we got to the.
Yeah, that's it. And there was someone else there as well.
Because the first checkpoint was at the bottom of Pen y Fan.
Bottom of Pen y Fan.
So it would have been checkpoint 2 then in that case? Oh no, so that
that's checkpoint.
Pen y Fan would have been checkpoint 2. Maybe. I can't even remember what time I did it in, to be honest. I'll have to quickly Strava and have a look.
So for me, like, I'd obviously done it before. I did it in 2019 with no training. My training for that is I signed up to do the Cardiff half, and I ran the Cardiff half in a 1:45, but I didn't train for that either. So I was massively underprepared, to be fair. And I did it within a minute of the cut-off time, because the cut-off's 10 hours. And I tore my hip flexor at mile 6 the first time. So then I still had the 24 miles, and like that included going up and over Pen y Fan. So that race sucked for me. So then when I was getting back into ultra running, I was like, I want to do that again. And I set myself a goal, which was nowhere near achieving, again, because I was underprepared. And yeah, I just like rocked up on the day with a little bit of training, but not much. And yeah, it was still insanely difficult. Like, I do not make it easy for myself. And you left me at one of the checkpoints because I just had to sit down for a while. And then I just constantly kept thinking like, oh, I wonder like what time he's finished in. I was like, I bet he's finished now. And I was still just running for like a good couple of hours.
That off the tarmac event, that's the first ultra I've ran with a company that wasn't Pegasus. Since starting doing the ultras, which is obviously what I'm only into my second year technically of doing them, because I did them in 21, had a year off to do the Ironman in 22, and then was doing the 12 and 12 this year. So like I'd always done my events with Pegasus, because obviously I have a bit of a working relationship with Reese, and I just enjoy, like, they're super friendly. Like, I know everyone pretty much, like, who runs them, so it's a nice kind of, it's a familiar as well as it being a challenge. And obviously, like, having done quite a lot of them in 21, I wanted to come back in 23, having an extra year of training, to see what I could do again, to see whether I could beat my times, like even on through the 12 in 12. I thought, even though I might be fatigued by like month 3 or 4 at the start of the slam, I thought I want to come back and I want to see if I can. I've improved myself as a runner. Like I know a little bit more. I'm a little bit more experienced. I'm a little bit fitter. So like I want to come back and see what I can do. So like the off the tarmac one was the first one that I'd done that wasn't with Pegasus, and I enjoyed it. Like it was different, but in a good way. Like I enjoyed the event. Like no offense to anyone. Obviously I found the checkpoints weren't quite as well stocked.
Yeah.
As Reese's.
Reese has got a reputation for like going all out on the checkpoints.
Yeah.
That is what he's known for. So.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I like the snacks.
I think the OTT ones, they're well stocked compared to most other events, but compared to Reese's, like, yeah, if you've done Reese's, you know that they're just going to be insanely good.
Yeah. Like, it had everything you needed. Like, so, like, and most of the time I tend to just grab a couple of little bits, and like I'll top up my water, but I always carry my own nutrition if I can anyway.
Yeah.
So, like I'll stop at the checkpoints, but I'm like I try and do it by a strict in and out in like 5-6 minutes max. Like so, like I'll, you know, there's no, you don't change your shoes in some events. So like the OTT, it's a 30 miler, but they don't have like a drop bag kind of thing. And I don't know. I know like a lot of them don't do drop bags. But with Reese's, normally, if you want, there will be a chance, even on the 30 milers, where they have drop bags available for people if you want to. So if it's been raining or one pair of shoes isn't quite working for you, you can change your shoes, which for some can be an absolute game changer, like, or it can be your absolute downfall, like, depending on which way you've played it. But I enjoyed it. Like, you know, it was good. Like, it was quite tough. Like, you know, going up Penavan, what, half marathon in by that point? I think we were like 20k in. Something.
Yeah. So by the time you get to the top, that's the half marathon point.
Top of Penavan is the half, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm pretty sure. Otherwise, it would be at the start of Penavan, one of the two. But it's either just before or at the top. You've done a half marathon.
Yeah. Like I would like to go back, I think, and do it again because I did enjoy it. Like. So I managed to find it on my Strava. So it took me 7 hours, 34 minutes and 5 seconds.
Okay.
Like, which is not as, I think I was hoping for a little bit faster, myself, but equally, like, it's still an ultramarathon 30 miler where you're going up Penavan.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you're off road, like. I'm not super fast. Like, it's under 8 hours, so I'm happy. Like, it's a finish. Like, it's not a DNF. Like, I'd do it again for sure. Like, it was good.
Yeah.
And I did the Celtic Trails one then with Run Walk Crawl.
Okay.
That was the December one, and that was quite good as well. Like, again, I think there was even less on the checkpoints there than with the off the tarmac.
Yeah.
But still, like, a good event. Like, the checkpoints were every, like, 10, 11k, rather than every, like, 8 or 9 miles. But then, that was quite nice, like, because you knew that there was going to be a checkpoint every 10k.
Yeah.
Pretty much. So that was quite cool. Like, it was, terrain-wise, mostly fire road. So it did get a bit boring, to be honest, on, like, the middle bit. So, like, the start and the end were off-road and were, like, seemed to be more, like, trail. Or what I would prefer to call like proper trail running.
Yeah.
But like in the in-between stuff, there was quite a lot of fire roads, which for me got a bit boring. Like, it was enjoyable. Like, there was a lot of scenery that you could look at, but it's fire road.
Yeah.
Like, once you've seen one stretch, you've seen any of it. Like, yeah.
Yeah. With the off the tarmac one, I remember. I thought I'd made the same mistake that I did on the first one, where I powered up Penavan, and I tried to get that in a good time. And up until then, I was on pace to hit my goal. And then I got to the top, and I was just like, I've blown my quads out again. Like, this is not good. I felt horrendous at the top of Pen y Fan. And then I started going down, and then that's when my descent kicked in, because I was sprinting down the descent. I'm like quite happy just like letting my legs just do the work, and I don't think I'll just go. And then it was at the bottom then where it starts easing back to the flat.
Yeah.
That's where I bumped into you, and there was someone else there as well. And we sort of just left that other guy behind, and we were just running for a while then. I think we did that one checkpoint together, and then it was the next one where I was like, I can't do this now. So the next checkpoint is the car park at the end of like where the fan dance would be.
Is that the car park by the reservoir?
Yeah.
So I think it might have been the checkpoint before that one.
Okay.
Where we parted ways. So like you said, like you had to have a little bit of a sit down.
Yeah.
But like that stretch, there was quite a long, windy, fire roady kind of section, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because I think, is that the Taft Trail? Is that part of the Taft Trail, that one?
I don't know.
That stretch? Or was that the other side?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
But that like last stretch from the car park one by the lake, that was quite an interesting little stretch, because there was a bit more like bit boggier, a bit more like trail, and then we went through the waterfall essentially, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a crazy bit, because I've done some running with the guys that run the event, John and Joni. They do like a Wednesday run club around the area.
Cool.
So I've been to a couple of their run clubs. I wish I could go more, but like just work and everything gets in the way. And I don't live the closest to it. And we did put that section like a couple of weeks before, I want to say, and it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
And then I get there on the day and I'm like, this is 10 times worse than when we did it the other day. Like, I didn't get wet the time before doing it.
Well,
like, that's how different it was compared to the day. Yeah, that was horrendous.
because there was, when we went, or when I got to that point, there was a group of about 5 of us, I think, that had kind of like, not buddied up as such, but we were all running at roughly the same pace. So we kind of buddied up in a way, like we were all like tagging on to each other, kind of like trying to keep pace and stuff, which is, you know, always nice to do, because if they run in roughly the same pace of you, like one part you might push the pace a little bit more, and then like another part they'll be a little bit stronger and they might push it, but you don't want to lose them, because it's like a couple of miles to the finish, so you don't want to lose someone, and obviously like the competitiveness kicks in and you want to be like, oh, I want to beat you now, like. So there was a couple of us, and we were all like keeping an eye out for each other and like making sure we were okay, because obviously that one point where you're going through the waterfall, like if you slipped, like that could be so sketchy.
Yeah.
Because that waterfall bit was just going straight into the river, like, and it was pretty rapid, like it was pretty overflowing by that point, and that could have been quite sketchy. So I don't envy anyone having to go through that stretch when it was darker.
I got lucky. I think I was just before it started getting dark. So, yeah, I was fortunate enough to go through it in the light.
Like I had my head torch on me, which I need to upgrade for Wild Horse, because it's not fantastic. But I think, yeah, doing that little stretch in the dark would have made it a lot worse.
Yeah.
Because it's being able to see where you need to actually head towards on that section just made it a little bit easier. Whereas in the dark, obviously, if you haven't got a very good head torch, then you might not be able to see that. Right, so like you've got to cross here. You've probably got the route on your watch, or you should do. But at that time, you could be like looking and be like, oh right, okay. Well, I know it's not going to be in the water, but is it like there or there or there? And like you can shine your head torch, but if it's not great, like you might not be able to see across. So I could imagine like a few people might have found that quite tough.
Yeah.
Like getting to that point, but equally like it was exhilarating. Like, and it's definitely an ultra if you have to go through a waterfall. Like,
yeah, it is a really good route. I do like the route. It's not easy though, and it's not an easy time of year to be doing it. No. But yeah, I really do like their events. They are really cool.
Have you done the Brecon Cardiff Extreme?
No.
I was thinking about signing up for it this year as like a training run, but I didn't in the end.
I thought about it as well.
Because you can either do the normal one, like Brecon to Cardiff, which is hard enough in its own right, I believe. But then you've got the extreme one where it goes up the mountains instead. And I was like, oh yeah, extreme. I was like, wow.
Just says extreme, you're just like,
ooh, hello. What's the meme where the guy's looking at the lady walking past him? But I didn't do it this year because I thought, well, it's money, that I can kind of put towards training gear.
Yeah.
For Wild Horse, so I think I bought myself one of the new Montaigne 20-litre race vest things. I think instead.
I think you're getting to the point now with these challenges, like you're saying earlier, like you've committed to one this year, like that's what you said you're doing, and you're going to stick to that. But then it's like, what's happening next year? And I think you're going to start looking at them as, like I do, it's like side quests.
Yeah.
So it's not a big challenge. It's not even like a small challenge. It's like, no, it's just a side quest. Like the 496 for me, I was like, that's a side quest. We'll just put that to the side. That doesn't count towards my challenges.
Because that's only 1 month of the year, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
So you can't really count it.
Oh, exactly, yeah. It's
the same with the 4448. Like, that's 2 days. Yeah. It's not a challenge. It's just a side quest.
Having done the 448 then yourself,
I haven't done it yet.
You haven't done that one yet?
I haven't done it yet.
I was going to ask if you'd say that would be it, or if you think that would be a good training exercise for the longer races.
I probably would think so. Thinking about it, I'll let you know once I've done it.
Yeah.
But
the 496, that was probably a bit of a mental game by the end.
That's the mental slog, yeah. And
especially doing 20k plus then past a certain point.
Yeah. So
up to 10, 16k a day is pretty manageable if you keep the pace down low, but a little bit more than that depending on what route you're going. If you're having depending on the time of day that you're doing it, if you're just having to pound the pavement because it's dark, then that's an awful lot of stress on your legs.
Yeah.
And on your knees and your ankles and stuff like that. And even the best shoe with the best cushioning, you're still gonna have problems.
Yeah.
Or it's still gonna hurt a little bit by the end, isn't it?
It was definitely a difficult challenge. I was definitely not physically ready for the challenge. And the first day of it, I hadn't told myself I was doing it. So the first day I was actually in Scotland, and me and my friend were staying in Scotland for New Year's, watched the fireworks in Edinburgh, and then I'd randomly just gone, should we go and do Ben Nevis? And he was like, yeah, I've never really climbed a mountain, I'll be up for it. And then I was like, okay, so we watched the fireworks, and then on the way down back to my car, I was like, yeah, so we're going there now, right? And then he was like, what you mean, we're going to go and do it right now? And I was like, yeah. So then I did a 3.5 hour drive on New Year's Day after watching the fireworks, so then go and park up at the bottom of Ben Nevis, woke up, and then I was like, right, let's go up now. And then I got down. I then had to drive back that same day to drop him off at the train station because he was getting a train back from Edinburgh, so I had the 3.5 hour drive back. And I was just sleeping in my car. I've got a blow up bed and everything set up in the back of my car. And I was just I woke up on the next day and I was like, I've definitely done more than 1 kilometre yesterday, so I might as well start doing this 496 thing. And I just went out for a run and I videoed myself. I was like, yeah, I'm doing this 496 challenge. I was massively underestimated it. On day 24, 25, I had a stress fracture in my foot from all the running. And I had a message from a physio being you should probably stop running and get it checked out properly.
Yeah.
And I just sort of was like, yeah, I'll definitely not do that.
In a couple of days.
Give it a week.
See what happens.
Yeah. And then on day 29, I was just randomly just got a 24-hour bug, and I was just throwing up while I was running. So I had to leave work early because I threw up at work. Went home. I was on the floor of my bathroom throwing up, and then slept for 4 hours, and I woke up and I was like, oh, I've got 29k to run now. And that was all I could think about. So I just got up and I just went out on a 29k run. I threw up 3 times on the run. Didn't feel great the next day, and then it was the last day, and I was like, I've just had 2 days of throwing up with a fractured foot. Let's just finish this out.
It's the last day though. I mean, if you've got that far, like,
Yeah.
you kind of think, if it's not realistically physically stopping you, even if you know you're going to be in pain, what's a couple of hours more?
Yeah.
Like, you know.
It was a bit weird because by that point, because I'd planned like a little group run, which is where Bob and Mike came down and my mum came down and joined me like last minute. I was like, I know I've got that group run planned, so like that's going to be easy. I'm not even worried about that. And like I had the full day off work, so I was like, easy.
Yeah.
The 2 days before, it was like, well, I'm working 2 jobs. I've got like 30k to run each day, trying to fit it around 2 jobs. And on day 30, I had to split it into 3 runs to fit it in throughout the day. And I literally finished at like 11:45 just to make sure I got it in. And after I finished that, I had the feeling that I'd finished because I'm like, oh, tomorrow's easy.
Yeah.
And then waking up and being like, oh, I haven't actually finished. I do still need to run 31k. But I didn't get that same feeling after day 30 because in my head, I'd finished on day 30.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, this is kind of like, it's a little bit shit because it's like, I feel like I finished, but I definitely haven't finished. And yeah, just when I did eventually finish, I was like, I'm really glad I don't have to do any more running, but I didn't feel that same accomplishment that I probably should have.
Yeah.
That was a bit difficult, but I definitely think doing it has given me more of a mental game for doing the ultras. Like there were days where I was like out on the trail having like a bit of a mental breakdown, being like, I'm in so much pain, like dealing with the physical pain, dealing with running while I'm throwing up. It's like, yeah, I don't think an ultra is going to be as difficult mentally as it probably would have been before.
Like one day as opposed to 30 consecutive days.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Like even the longer events, like, you know, they might only be a couple of days. So if you've done 30 where you've been consistently doing, like 10, 11, 12 plus kilometers a day and obviously consecutively getting more, then I would absolutely say that's going to feed into your ability to run ultras.
Yeah.
Like, and I look forward to seeing what you do on the rhythm. Like,
yeah,
I mean, that's September, I think.
It is
That's
September. It is September.
So I haven't decided or not whether I'm going to do the rhythm or not.
Maybe see you there. That'll be exciting.
Not next year, this year.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't know whether to do any of them this year, but I don't see them as like a big event.
Yeah, this
Like,
is what I'm saying. It's a side quest.
Yeah. So I obviously said to Alex, like, I won't do any big ones. The Wild Horse 200 is the big one. But then, like, what's a little ultra on the weekend? You know, did one a month.
It's a 30 miler. Like, it's not a big event. I've just done 200 miles.
Like 8 hours. Like, that'd be alright.
Yeah. And that's kind of like my mentality because, like, although I've got a big goal for it, it is like a bit of a side quest because like 2 weeks before that is when I'm going to be attempting the tyre flip.
Cool.
So I'm going to have like 2 weeks rest and then going from like tyre flip training to running training. So yeah, I probably won't hit my goal, but at the same time I'm like, oh, I probably should.
Yeah.
So we'll see on the day. I've got a coach now, so if it goes wrong, I'm blaming him. Sorry, Grant.
Like that's one thing I haven't actually done yet is I haven't got a coach, and I don't know if I should or not. Like I've toyed with it before, but equally I'm not. Yeah, I don't know. You can do a lot of research online.
Yeah.
And I think maybe I'll see how I get on with this one. Like it probably would be a good idea, and I think if I did get one, it would force me to be accountable for my running and doing what is prescribed by a qualified coach, which would enable me then to be a bit stronger to do the events. But I'm normally pretty good with forcing myself to go out.
Yeah.
Like when I have to. Like if I know I've got to bank some runs and get some time in, like I do tend to force myself to go out. Probably at the detriment of everything else I've got going on, but like I'm normally pretty good with it.
Yeah.
So like this week I think it was like 7 miles Monday, and I went out and I did 13 on Tuesday. Just went out and did a little bit of a loop of around by me, like up around by like Smilog Woods and over the common near the Dragon Studios and stuff like that, and just went out with my poles, like a bunch of water, a couple of little bit of snacks, and just went out and had a couple of hours out and about on the trails.
Yeah.
And that was beautiful, but I knew that if I didn't bank some runs on those days, like on Monday and Tuesday, because Wednesday and Thursday are quite long days for me, like I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to have the time to get runs in. So those have been the only 2 days this week so far that I've run. So I'm hoping to run today before I start work later. And then I'll probably try and do something tomorrow. And then I've got the recce on Sunday, so it should end up being about 40-50 miles this week maybe.
Yeah.
But that'll be the longest I've run in a good couple of weeks, because the past 2 or 3 weeks have been 30-40k, like if that, and the previous ones have been 50k-ish. So obviously I need to up my training a little bit more. I feel like I should up my training a little bit more.
Yeah.
But equally the plan is just to keep it comfortable.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if it matters how much I'm running per week. Like it probably does, but if I'm just keeping it comfortable and stuff, then
I feel like this is where a coach would help, because like for me, I am a qualified coach, so people are like looking at me like, I told my dad, and he was asking me, he was like, you've got a coach, and I'm like, yeah. He was like, you are a coach?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, but like coaches will need a coach too. And what it does for me, like the main reason I do it is because I've got so many things I want to do. I will not stick to a single training plan. I'll be like, well, I want to do this, so I'll incorporate that in, and then I'm like, oh, but that's going to take away from this other thing, so I'll train this first. And I'm constantly changing my own plan to try and make the perfect plan.
Yeah.
Whereas if I've got a coach that's just been like, do this, do this, do this, I can just look at that, and like all the guesswork's taken out.
Yeah.
It's like, I'll just do that. If it's going wrong, I can then feed that back to him, and then he can adjust it, and he can look at things from like the outside perspective and be like, maybe you're feeling like this because like this has happened in your training here and here. Maybe those things don't work for you. Whereas I'd just look at it and be like, I'm just not doing well.
Yeah.
Like, and it just takes all that guesswork out from you and gives an external pair of eyes to just be like, let's take a look at why this is happening instead of like beating yourself up about it. Like I definitely get caught in that trap.
Yeah. Like I'm doing my level 3 PT through work at the moment. So hopefully in a month or so I'll be a qualified PT, and I think I will probably find the same thing as you. Like you've probably got an awful lot more experience, like years of doing it. And I think the more and more people I talk to that are PTs and that do a lot of training themselves, like they have their own coaching.
Yeah.
Very similarly for the reasons like you said, that it takes the guesswork out of it a little bit, or it might be that they know what they know and they could be very knowledgeable, but having that outside perspective and taking out the guesswork and making it a little bit easier, making it so that you don't necessarily have to think as much about what you need to do, kind of just makes it easier as a whole, because like you say, you've been given a plan and be like, right, today I need to go out and do this, tomorrow I need to do that. You'd be like, right, okay, cool, done. Like you won't overthink it, you won't guesswork. Like you won't be like, oh well, I've planned that for myself, but is that going to be right? Like should I not change that to something else? Like should I do like a leg strength exercise today instead of a long 3-hour run up on the mountains? Like will that be more time efficient? What will be better? Like it's an odd one. I think in the future, like if I do other events, or when I do other events, there's no point denying it. Like I will be doing some other bits. I think it would be good to get a coach.
Yeah.
Like, and it's finding the right one that knows about the challenge that you want to do. Like, so obviously this year is going to be another year on like ultramarathons. I'd like to have another bash at Ironman. Like I would love to get under 12 hours for Ironman Wales. That would be something that I would be ecstatic to do. Because it took me an awful lot longer in 22 than I would have liked. It took me 15 hours, 24 minutes. And for anyone who is listening or watching, part of that is to do with the Science and Sport beta fuel. So they do the nootropics gel.
Yeah.
So it says on there, obviously, you get like 40 grams of carbs in there per gel, which is double the normal gels. So great, extra carbs per gel, so you're not using as much space. Fantastic. But the nootropics, apparently, it's got this like extra little bit in it, which helps with like your mental focus, apparently. So it like keeps you a bit more aware. But what I hadn't read anywhere, and what I didn't know until I was actually chatting to a guy, I believe, it was either the Off the Tarmac one or it was the Run Walk Crawl event in the Celtic Trails thing. So you're only meant to have one every 24 hours.
Oh.
So, yeah. I think during the event I must have had about 6 or 7.
Just a little bit over.
Yeah, so my stomach was not in a great place. I spent a good 3/4 of the marathon for Ironman Wales feeling like I was going to shit myself, like, which was horrendous.
Yeah, that does not sound pleasant.
It was not great. It was not. So I'd like run a little bit, and then I'd be like, oh no. So I'd stop and I'd walk, and I'd be like, okay, run a little bit. Oh, no. But like you'd stop at the Portaloos, and because it had been raining, and obviously like there's thousands of people doing it. There's no toilet roll. So you're like, right, can't even go to the loo if I want to because there's no toilet roll, and I'm not, running without wiping because no sir. So, but like mentally, I knew I can run a marathon, and I know I can do more than a marathon. Like, I've done races where it's been pretty much a double marathon. So like, and then on harder terrain, up in the mountains and the hills and stuff. Because by that point I'd done the North Cannon, so I was a 50 miler.
Yeah.
Or 52, I think it ended up being. Pesky Reese and his distances. So I thought, I'm in trouble. Like, I'm not feeling great, but I know I can do it. Like, physically, I know I can do it.
Yeah.
And I think I got to the end, and obviously, like, I'd finished in time. Fantastic. Like, should have been like a really like happy, fantastically ecstatic point. And Joe Skipper, the winner for that year, he was there at the finish line, shook my hand and said like, well done mate, like appreciate you being here kind of thing. And then all I could think about afterwards was getting back to the Airbnb. Like I just couldn't see past getting my t-shirt, grabbing my bike and just going to the toilet. And I think that ruined the feeling for me a lot, because obviously like in the finishers bit there's like pizza, there's like cakes and like sweets and stuff, I think. But I just had these like blinkers on, and I had to get out of there. I had to go, and I think my missus still brings it up now, and she's just got this memory that lucky woman she will always have of me just spending like 20 minutes in the toilet. We got back to the Airbnb going, oh.
And you're still together.
And we're still together. I mean, if that's not love, like, you know what it is.
You found the one
Exactly,
that will not only let you do these challenges, but experience like the full range of what it brings.
I've already prepped her. Like, she's going to be, I think, helping me out for the Wild Horse. She's going to be part of my crew.
Oh, that's exciting.
Which is pretty cool. So I'm hoping that like having her like positive kind of like supportive presence is going to be like a massive game changer for those low moments where she knows me well enough that like she can just like suck it up, buttercup, or like.
Reese says the same thing. Reese says he couldn't do it without Keris, and when he's done,
lovely. Like,
when he's done events without her, he's like you notice it, like. You just don't go as fast. You don't do as well as you want. Whereas when you've got that person there with you, like, it makes the world of difference.
Yeah. Like, Alex has been pretty much at every single one of the events from the 12 and 12. And, like you say, like, knowing that they're there and knowing that even though they may not be able to make it to every checkpoint to meet you, like, if you know that they're going to be at a certain one, like, it gives you something to look forward to, something to work towards, and you're like, oh, yeah. Like, if I run a little bit faster, I get to see them a little bit quicker. And like, it definitely does help, like for sure. But yeah, I think she might be helping me sort out my like feet and stuff during the wild horse. And bless her, she's been looking at all sorts of videos. Like genuinely, she's probably done more research than I have by a country mile on like training methods and like foot care and everything like that comes with it. She's probably done more than me because I'm a bit more like, I'll deal with it as I get to it. Like I'll do a little bit of research, but I'll just like go off and do it. And if I hit a hiccup or like a bump in the road, I'll be like, right, okay, I'm here now. Like, how can I solve it now? Like, I'm not very good myself at looking at like the what ifs.
Yeah.
I'll just be like, fuck it. Like, I'll go. And if something happens, I'll sort it out on the fly. Which probably isn't the best way of doing it realistically.
I feel like a lot of people in this sort of space of like pushing themselves like that, I think they're more like that, because if you start getting into the what ifs, then it's like you get put off quite quickly.
Yeah, like it could be dangerous, couldn't it? Yeah.
But I do feel like you need someone like you're saying, Alex, there, who's going to do the research for you and be the one that's going to be dealing with it. I feel like that could potentially be the difference between people that try and do these things and people that do well in these things.
Yeah.
Is having that person there that's going to ground them a bit, rather than just be like, because like for me, I'll just be like, yeah, I'll just go off and do this thing. And then I'll come across these injuries and I'll have no idea how to deal with it. And I'll just keep pushing. And it's not the smartest thing to do. Whereas you've got Alex and it's going to be like, well, I'm going to push and then I'm going to get to this point. And then I've got someone that's going to have the knowledge to deal with it.
Like I know I started my like running stuff essentially after university. So like I used to swim when I was a kid a lot. Like me and my twin sister used to swim for Bridgend County. So we swam competitively, and then we kind of obviously like exams and life gets in the way. And then I went to university and enjoyed myself a little bit too much, as you do. Swam with the club then, which was just more for the social than anything else. And it kind of got into the habit of drinking a bit too much, a bit too often, as I think a lot of people do. Excuse me. And then I think it was, I think it might have been 2017 maybe. I did the Christmas morning swim. And someone took a photo, like my mum or my dad or something, had come down to watch. And I remember seeing the photo afterwards and just thinking, like I can't do this anymore. Like that has to change. Like if, like outwardly, like obviously it's very like, I don't know what's the word. Like prideful? No, that wouldn't be the word. But like I didn't like what I was seeing. I didn't like the way I looked.
Yeah.
And I thought like I have to do something about this. Like that's not staying like that. Like that has to change. Like for me, like that has to change. Like I don't like what I see there. So I started like going for runs and running and in the beginning, when I was starting, I'd buy cheap trail shoes because they were always on offer on sports shoes, and they'd be like £35 a pair. And I'd be like, yeah, cheap pair of running shoes. Like they're running shoes, I can run in those. But obviously trail shoes don't have as much bounce, as much like heel support. And obviously if you're running on tarmac a lot, which I was at the beginning, with trail shoes, like the grip just goes really quite fast. Like a couple of months and the grip is gone. And I found I was getting a lot of injuries and stuff, and it took me a while to work out that I was doing it wrong. Like I needed road shoes, and I'd get like shin splints, so I started, and like I pulled my calf muscles quite a lot, so I like re-looked and did research into like why this was happening, and I like changed the way I was running because I found I was heel striking more in the beginning, because like at the start I'd started doing like a couple of like park runs and 5Ks and stuff, and I used to think obviously like the faster you go the better, like because you got to go fast, like, and I ended up like overextending my stride, which led to me heel striking and sending like obviously jarring all the way up your legs, and that was causing me issues with my knees, my shins, my ankles, like my hips, like everything like that. It was just all coming from bad form, and I certainly wouldn't say my running form is fantastic now, but it's better than what it was. And I know that, obviously like certain kind of distances, certain terrain, like you can change your running form a little bit and like how you run in to like compensate for certain things.
Yeah.
But at the time, like it was not great, and it was causing me these kind of problems. And I think like we talk about, having someone there with the knowledge to help you afterwards. But I think sometimes you've just got to go out and make those mistakes yourself to learn, because having someone tell you what to do is great, but I think you learn it better if you go out and make those mistakes yourself and then realise what you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit more of like a teaching point. Like it shouldn't be, obviously, because if someone's giving you some advice, you should follow it, like especially if it's grounded in research and everything like that. But it's quite hard, I think, especially when, again, in like you mentioned, like this kind of space, like challenges, side quests, like ultra running, ultra endurance kind of events and stuff. Like you are quite, you might be more like solitary. Like you quite like your own company.
Yeah.
Like you're used to it. Like I enjoy my own company. Like I'm more than happy to go out and spend 5, 6, 7 hours on the trails by myself. Like it's lovely, like meeting people along the road and in events like yourself. Like fantastic, awesome, and that does add to the event and how much you enjoy it. But it wouldn't bother me if I'd just gone by myself the entire thing.
Yeah.
Like if you just said, right, run 50k, you're doing this route, off you go. Like I quite like that, like because it's headspace. Like I think nowadays, like we are so bombarded by televisions, social media, the radio, like everything like that is a lot of like traffic, cars, there's buildings everywhere. Like having that chance to get away from it all for a couple of hours and just get out into the countryside is an absolute game changer for me. Like it's incredible.
Yeah.
Like it's fantastic. Cannot extol the virtues of just getting out in nature enough.
Yeah.
Like it's
No, sounds good. To bring the podcast to a bit of a close then, what we always do on the podcast is I ask the guest to set a challenge for the week for any of the listeners. So what would be your challenge this week for the listeners?
Challenge for the week.
So we've had a few like interesting challenges thrown out there. We've had like visit a trig point. That was quite an interesting one. We've had like get to the gym 3 times in the week.
Yeah.
We've had get up early every day of the week.
Yeah.
We've had one which was just about going out and doing something nice for someone else, like a random act of kindness.
That's a cool one.
So we've had a few things like that. So what would be your challenge?
Maybe do something different. So if you're used to training, like if you're a powerlifter, maybe like go out for a hike, or if you're an ultra runner, go for a swim. Maybe if it's something that takes you away from the normal, something that breaks the comfort zone, or might break the comfort zone, doesn't have to be an exercise, or perhaps the challenge could possibly be try something new, try something different. Like that could be quite cool. So it's something I try and do myself.
Yeah.
Like if it scares you, but if it's something a little bit different, like it could be quite cool. Like you never know, you might enjoy it, and it might improve your training and improve what you do.
That's a really good challenge. I really like that. Well, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Where can people find you online if they want to follow your journey across the Wild Horse and all the other things you're going to be getting up to in the future?
So I'm on Instagram as SubJones. You'll probably have seen Reese post about the trophies that I do, because I make all of Reese's trophies and stuff like that. Post not as often as I probably should. But yeah, so Instagram is SubJones. I'm on Facebook as SubJones, or Owain Jones as well on Facebook too. So I'll probably try and document the Wild Horse and future events as best I can.
That sounds amazing. Well, thanks again for your time. And yeah, we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, man. We'll have to do this big group event you were talking
Yeah,
about.
I'm so excited. I need to get planning because it's coming up now. It's 2 months away.
2 months.
So yeah, not long. But yeah, I'll get something planned. I'll get it in my diary, and yeah, I'll let you know what it is and when.
I'm down. Yeah,
Amazing.
Cool.
Thank you.
Cheers, man. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Adventure Athletes podcast. If you like this episode, make sure you follow us on Instagram, Spotify and YouTube, and share our content around. It helps more than you can ever imagine. Now, if there's a person in particular that you want to hear from, or a topic that you want us to cover, just drop us a message, let us know in our DMs, and we'll make sure we try and reach out to the relevant people to cover that topic for you. We're always trying to make content that you guys want to listen to. We have just dropped our website. It's adventureathletes.co.uk, and you can go on there to find out the range of different services we offer. So we have sports massage, different training programs, and personal training, both online and in person, that you can sign up to on the website. So make sure you go and check us out at adventureathletes.co.uk.